Well, greetings everyone, and welcome once again to another Monday evening to an imperfect union, brought to you by the political consciousness of West Coast Steeler fan. Uh, my excuse me, Twitter name and handle, as well as my handle on Facebook. You can subscribe to our channel, please, and we have a Cash App up there, JEK3, where you can donate to our channel. Let's get all of the commercials out of the way. And there are some very serious topics that I have in mind for tonight. And I'm hoping to be joined later by Mr. Anthony Scott. Uh, I would like to especially discuss the question of uh, immigration and the effects of the African immigrants upon the neighborhoods of uh, American Afro Americans as opposed to African immigrants. I know a lot of people are concerned about uh, what's going on in Milwaukee and actually the whole state, excuse me, the whole state of Wisconsin as well as Minnesota. And it's going to be interesting to get some of his remarks. Also, I hope to, uh, well, Mr. Williams will be in a little later on, and I want to also wonder, excuse me, I want him to also address a third question that I have put on our Facebook page. If you follow our subjects, and it's the speed with which the House passed this bill for same to codify same-sex marriage, as well as some other issues within the LGBTQ plus community, and how quick we were able to get that through the House into the Senate, but we haven't been able to get a voting bill through the House to the Senate, nor have we been able to get an abortion bill through the Senate. I mean, excuse me, through the House and to the Senate, as evidenced with the recent Roe v. Wade decision and the controversy that is continuing afterwards. Uh, Also, one of my main questions is about Kamala Harris and who is going to be running for the Democrats in 2024 for the next presidency. But before I get to that, I'd like to talk a little bit about the January 6th riots or insurrection or whatever you would like to call it, or you uh, uh, think about these, excuse me, January 6th events that happened in DC. And as I look at the hearings, I listen to the different testimonies from different factions of 45's administration. talk about how this was handled and how he wanted to go and lead the crowd. Uh, some say it's all about politics and the right wing, that these things never happened in that sequence. But what if that president had been 44 and he had decided that rather than turn the government over to Donald J. Trump, that he would take a third term? There's no way that this guy could have beat Hillary Clinton. You know the election must be rigged, and uh, you know uh, let's see if we can throw these results out. Would we be having the same conversation? Would 44 be charged with sedition and treason and have been carted off to Leavenworth or some other federal facility? Let's contemplate that for a moment. The Justice Department, or, yeah, the DOJ, the department that should be looking into this, seems to be dragging its feet. It took less time to get Al Franken out of office for a comedy routine. Now we have a plethora of witnesses as to what happened during that particular event. But yet and still, there are no charges. I find it very amusing that people of power can ignore subpoenas. Is it just a coincidence that all these people are of Caucasian descent? Is it? Or once again, is it just a conspiracy theory brought up by people within the black neighborhood? To take this a step further, when we're talking about the black neighborhood, can you tell me what positive results will result from these hearings for our particular neighborhoods, for the neighborhoods that are black and brown? Are the results of this January 6th hearing going to make education and the educational system within black and brown neighborhoods any better? Are the results of the January 6th hearings going to help police reform within our neighborhoods? Are the results of anything in the January 6th hearing going to do, is it going to have any effect in housing within our neighborhoods? Uh, where is, let's see. I know I didn't miss Dr. Casey. Uh, yeah, let's see. Uh, oh, there she is. She must have known. Evidently, she knew I was talking about. Her ears must have been burning. I know that had to be it. That's the only way that she can come in right here on time. I know. Dr. Casey, were your ears burning?
No, but sometimes I've been known to be intuitive. So
How are you this evening?
I'm doing already yourself.
I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. I had to miss last week. I was kind of upset about some things that had happened last week. And we might have got thrown out there if I went on last week. But anyway, I've calmed down a little bit now. And I was just talking about not necessarily our theme yet, but I was talking about these January 6th events. And I look at them every day. And, as usual, I'm okay. Well, they let 45 get away with this, they let 45 get away with that. And I was wondering, what if 44 had said, well, I don't want Trump to be president, and I'm just going to stay here and take me a third term?
Well, technically speaking, there is a way that Obama could have done that. I actually looked it up. Okay, so I looked it up like when he was in office, and there is a legal way that he could have done that. And I don't think that they would have stood for it. I think that the response would have been locking him up immediately. Like they would have locked Obama up and threw away the key if he would have tried anything like that.
Talk-
With no
hey,
remorse.
yeah, hey, but I, I'm commander in chief. I mean, come
But
on
no,
now.
legally,
And
like, no,
see,
seriously,
no,
legally,
I
he could have really stayed in for another term. It's a tricky way to do it, but he could have done it. I literally looked it up. I wish I had the information like right off the top of my head. But you blinded me with this. It just came out of nowhere. Um, but like literally, he could have done that, but they would not have gone for that. I suggested it at first, honestly, because I was like, "You could do this. Like, there is a way to do it." Now, Trump didn't do it the right way, but there is a way to legally do it. But they would have not have gone for that. Shit,
oh
they
no,
barely wanted him to be president legally. I
yeah,
mean,
I mean,
like,
yeah. I mean, hey, what did what's his face say? The little weasel looking guy, that his whole political agenda was to make sure that Obama did not put anybody in the Supreme Court, and he did say at the beginning that he would try to make sure that Obama never got a second term. So, you
I
know,
mean, but that's the part. They didn't really want Obama in there to begin with. So it would have been nothing for them to find a reason to, because he did nothing wrong. Like, I mean, he probably didn't do everything right, but he didn't do anything that they could have, punished him for while he was in office. So, they would have looked for any reason to try to get him.
Yeah, yeah. But I just, it was just something that came up off the top of my head when I'm looking at all this BS that, that we're subjected to. And then the other thing that I thought about is how much time we're devoting to uh, the January 6th hearings. But
How
this,
much
but these hearings and even the outcome will do nothing for the black community.
nothing has
I
ever
mean,
been
I
about
mean,
the black community. They
do
don't never
you
do
see
it.
something? Do
It
you see something that
if
we
if
will
if
gain?
you think that anything that they're doing has ever been about the black community, then you have fooled yourself. Their goal, the black community is nowhere near in their stratosphere of people to protect or do anything for. So it doesn't equate to anything for the black community to begin with. But it technically, I mean, like, if we're being technical, those are the people that we need to create change. We need more stuff like that to happen, because when they revolt, then we have an opportunity to move in and do things for our community. What they did wasn't outrageous enough, but it definitely, that is the movement of people that we need to go as a black community. We need the white people, the white community, to act the ass, because if they act the ass, then we be more like saviors in trying to fix it, and or them disassembling the way things are, it will allow us to make the changes that we would need to make. So I wasn't necessarily mad about January 6th events, because those are the people that we need to do it. Those are the only people that can go in there and run amok and nothing happened to them. So if that is the case, then sometimes it has to be like a Trojan horse, where we can get the angry white people riled up enough to turn things over, and then we can come in and save the day.
But that's what we thought with 44, Barack
Who
Obama.
thought that? I never thought that. I think that what Trump did was more beneficial to us than anything that anybody else could have done, because he's the only one that could have gone in there and stirred up some crap and them not do anything. A black man could never be in the White House and make real changes or just do anything that put a magnifying glass on the way politics really are versus how real politicians make them seem to be. Because Barack Obama's a politician. At the end of the day, no matter what skin color he is, he got in there and he played the game the way they told him to play it, because he didn't have a choice.
Right.
But
He had go ahead.
But when you see Trump get in there, he's not a politician. He don't know none of he's not playing none of the political games. He's letting them bribe him right in front of everybody. He showed the inner workings of America, the White House, and then even with Biden now, I don't even think Biden is fit to run right now. But those people
We're going
can
to talk about that too, but go ahead. I'm going to
those
bring that up as our next subject, but go ahead.
those people are the ones to make change. Oh, somebody like Obama, at the moment that he got in office, they was trying to find a way to throw him out. So all he could do was get in there and play the game. Now the next black president, if there is another black president in our lifetime, and we're not talking about if Kamala gets put in that position, because Biden is
We'll talk about that.
so so I mean, it's I like what Trump did for us as far as exposing the truth, more than what anybody else could have done for us. Hillary could have never would have never exposed the things that Trump exposed about the United States or how the government is run. So I mean, I know a lot of people don't like Trump, but I liked what he brought to the table, because he really put everything on Front Street. He showed us what is capable of being done. He showed us how they're doing it, and he's not a politician enough to play those games. It wasn't like it was just another one of the good old boys in the seat. He's like the black white man. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't fool with Trump like that. Like they're rallying behind him now because of the movement that he was able to create. But prior to that, they wasn't fooling with Trump like that. Nobody wanted him to win. Shit, he didn't even think he was gonna win. We all was surprised. But only a person that looks like them can really infiltrate what they got going on.
Now, I understand that there's a big generational gap between us. So I'm not one of those conventional people like Mr. Scott or maybe Miss Sims, but people of that ilk that are somewhat sheltered, that have come up believing, all you have to do is go down and put your ballot down. If you keep singing enough sad songs, things are going to change. If you keep, praying and getting down on your knees, the good Lord is going to send you a blessing. I'm not that guy. Okay. But when Barack Obama was elected, a lot of people of that generation thought that there was going to be this great change. All of a sudden, there was going to be acceptance. Lord, we have overcome. The bridge is burned down. The angels in heaven is singing. We got a black president. Slavery is abolished.
No, he was
Bullshit.
just he was just a slave in high power, just like Nat Turner or whoever was the preachers of the slave times that they used to put up there to we gonna get you to give in. We just gonna use one of your people to make you give in, and then whatever happens. But when I look at when I look at Trump, the first thing I said, even before he started to his campaign, I always thought that he had the possibility of winning. But when I look at the history of him, he's always been in black people face, around the black people. Like he might act a certain type of way, but Trump is the the blackest white man that you kind of gonna get. Now he may not he definitely used the race card to win, but any person that's running for any type of office, they're going to ride the wave of whoever their supporters are. Now I'm not saying that he's a good person. I'm not saying none of that. What I'm saying is that he did the type of shit that a black person would do if they was in office and could do what the hell they want to do. How he dealt with Russia, how he dealt with just a lot of things, how he manipulated the system in broad daylight. Like he just did it like on Front Street. He didn't care.
Well, see, once again, sounding like that old man, got on the black socks and shorts, kicking the kids off the line. Uh, you know, uh, he did things because he had, and I don't care how you wanted to take it. He had white privilege. He's had white privilege all his life, and those are the principles that he works upon. Now, uh, when you call him the blackest white man, I'm not quite sure whether I want to take Trump under my wing. Now I've done a lot of I'm not saying that I'm
Do you agree that white people can be niggas too, like just as ignorant as black folks can be?
oh, most definitely.
So
Yeah.
if you believe
but
that, then
but
what I
but but
said
I
is
don't believe that all niggas are black.
right. But that's what I'm saying. So, but yeah, he act like a nigga. Like
Yeah,
he
yeah, yeah. He acted like the definition of a nigga. You right. Not without any type of coloration or whatsoever. He acted exactly like the term a nigga. You're right. I have to agree with that. You know, but then like I said, I don't think that nigga is synonymous with black. I think, I mean, you got Chinese niggas, you got, Puerto Rican niggas, niggas are international. It's- you but when you use the term, you know, you know what people, that they automatically put that, in front of it. But go ahead.
I mean, now that like I I just I see things differently when it comes to that because I feel like what he did for us was expose a lot of things, and he showed us what was capable of being done in a way that nobody else would have shown it. He bucked the whole system. From him winning itself was bucking the system. Because he is not a politician, but he showed us more than Obama did. Obama showed us that a black person could get in office. Trump showed us what a nigga can do when in office.
With power. See Obama never
but
had
but
any power. They gave Trump
Trump,
all the power.
they had the same amount of power. It is what do you do with the power that you have? Obama had power. He may not
Uh,
have used it the way that a white person is able to use their same power. The power is there. The power is present. But guess what? A powerful, fearful person is gonna operate in more fear than they do in their power. So if you afraid that they gonna do something, that they looking for a reason to get you out of office, they looking for a reason to lock you up, they already questioning where you was born and all that. Guess what? You gonna tread fucking lightly. You not gonna be in those scandals. You not gonna do nothing. But when that's why I said only white people can disrupt the system. Only white people can put a stop to the things that are going on. So in some narratives, even when you think about race wars or things like that, the problem is that largely I would say the government uses its stance in order to continue to put white people against black people, to put the ignorant white people against the ignorant black people. Because guess what? If we keep y'all going at each other, then y'all never look at us and see what the hell we got going on because we really getting both of y'all. Like the poor white people, which is a large majority of white people, are just as bad as black people are. They're in the probably sometimes worse position than black people because guess what? They don't realize that they on the same level as us. They don't realize that y'all might be white, but y'all they don't fuck with y'all like that either. They just, y'all just got the whiteness on y'all side. But poor white people are really no different than poor black people. But as long as we keep looking at each other trying to war, we'll never look at the system that is keeping us at war within ourselves.
See, once again, I go back to things that we have tried in the past and really haven't worked for us. I mean, on the surface, maybe.
What
And if you
things like what?
well, like, okay, you said that the only way, and it has been true, but when you go back to the civil rights movement, okay, and you think of uh, until the the statement was, or the mission statement was, until we can get white people to back us, we can never achieve civil rights freedom. And that's why we had the different organizations sending young white kids down to the South. Now, has that strategy really worked for us? As you
What
talk,
I'm saying and what you're talking about is 2 totally different things.
okay,
I'm not talking
explain.
about black people I mean, white people supporting the black movement. I'm talking about white people
Okay.
being on whatever their agenda is and disrupting everything in such a way to where we are able to do what we need to do in the midst of that. I'm not talking about, like, what Martin Luther King them did. They didn't do shit. Nothing really changed. Like, uh,
Shh, come on now, you're gonna
I
get us
I
kicked
love
off there, Dr. Casey. No,
I
go
love
ahead.
Dr. Martin Luther King. I love what he stood for, but even he knew that he wasn't doing what he thought he was doing. It was just not, this dream that he had. It was what he said. It was a nightmare. He was walking his people into a nightmare. But it's what I'm talking about is not about no civil rights or nothing like that. In
Okay.
order for, like, John Brown. John Brown, he had his own thing going on. He wasn't necessarily for like behind the black people movement. He was not with what everybody else was with, what the other white people was with though. Like he's like, nah, this ain't it. But it wasn't that he was backing black people necessarily. It just he didn't like what they were doing. So it takes for white people like Tom Hanks. He just did. I just seen a video clip of him going around talking about the Tulsa massacre, like how he didn't know about it. It takes for people to realize this is the reason why history is painted the way it is, because some white people will act the fool if they realize that they counterparts is bad to the bone.
Yeah, like I said, maybe it's because I spent time being incarcerated. Maybe it's because I spent time overseas and away from this country. But I do not understand how people like Tom Hanks or people, supposedly educated people, are telling me that they do not know about the atrocities committed by their people. That
Before a couple of years ago, and I started reading books, I had no idea about the black wealth that was in our country. So it's not something that's like, oh my God, I can't believe. No, I could believe they didn't know it the same way they trying to keep it from kids now. It's a lot of stuff that they purposefully make sure that certain things do not get exposed, because if one person knows, then it somebody like Tom Hanks find out something and now he's on video talking about, well, why didn't I know this? That is a real thing. Like, I don't think that he's like blinded, like, oh, he was ignoring the fact. No, these stories are really just now coming to light in a way to where people are having access to the information. Yeah, it happened, but how many times you seen somebody from Tulsa Massacre, because there are survivors and have been survivors over the years that were able to get on the news and talk about it before the last 5 years, before the
right,
last 10 years. That is not common knowledge. Just like
but
people don't know that the original American was copper skinned people. That is not common knowledge. Stop thinking that because we know things or we've been exposed to things that everybody has this common sense of knowledge. That is not common knowledge. I don't care how much money you get. Guess what? The more money you get and you're white, guess what? That's more information that they don't tell you. There are gatekeepers. Gatekeepers are not just keeping the people that want to get money from you, from around you. They're also keeping that narrative. It's almost like I like to use R. Kelly for an example. I love R. Kelly. I think he needs to be in jail, but I also think that everybody on his staff and all those parents need to be in jail too. But that's a good example. As a person with wealth, there are people around you that's going to feed you the information and everything that they want you to see, hear, believe, and feel, as long as it goes to their agenda for you. So your handlers, if your handlers are not exposing you to information, guess what? If somebody tried to pass that man a dang on paper or a book or anything, there is somebody that's sifting through anything that goes to him, because we need to keep him focused on what we need to keep him focused on. It's almost like Scientology. It's almost like Christianity. It's almost like being a Muslim. They give you what you're supposed to know. And if you read anything outside of what we tell you to read, then it's a problem. So it's not, it may seem like, oh, I don't know how they wouldn't know, but no, they've written history books. They've told you what they wanted you to know. And then if you do anything, read anything, see anything outside of here, critical race thinking, we got to shut that down. They're going to shut it down, because I'm sure it's just like, when you think about white people that teach their kids and grandkids to be racist, to hate black people, those kids have experienced some nice black people at some point. But guess what? If you are overwhelmed with, oh, they're gonna do this and they're gonna do that, and they thinking that we're so demonized, quote unquote, then it don't matter what is floating out there that could be true. Your grandparents, your parents, just like with religion, they structure what they want you to see and they feed it to you. And anything outside of that, you won't even believe it. In 10 years, people will never believe the conversation that we're having about critical race theory, unless something is exposed to where it's made in the history books to where this was a problem and this is how we resolved it. Other than that, they're going to keep sweeping stuff under the rug. They're not sweeping it up under the rug just from us. There are white people that have no idea what black people have gone through, period. And it don't matter if you rich, that don't mean that they're gonna start telling you more stuff because you got money. No, they keep more stuff from you because you might use your money to help the people that we ain't trying to help.
Yeah, well, I guess that kind of makes sense, but once again, maybe it's because I had that time on my hands, and I was into self.
Institutionalized understanding is not the same as you're always going to see things a certain way because jail is not like the streets. The people in jail have a whole different warped mind because guess what? First off, they're criminals. Secondly, they probably criminals that, especially when it comes to different races, they are probably just as brainwashed and mind controlled as anybody else because even in there now it goes back to the race thing because all the white people be together, all the black people, and everybody, you know what I'm saying, is
But
trying
see,
to
it
their
didn't
own.
that a different conversation. But that's But in the 60s, 70s, 50s, you survived by your own merits. You didn't have, like, hey man, I can go call, all these guys that wear blue and they'll protect me. I mean, it just wasn't, so, but that's a different conversation because as you say, now we're all divided into, you know, black, brown, whatever, every race has its own little niche rather, so things have kind of changed, but uh let's talk about something that you kind of brought up earlier, and that's Kamala Harris. And living out here in California, I might be a little more familiar with some of the things that she's done, some of the things that she's said, as far as people of her own color are concerned. At one point, uh, you know, uh, well, everybody knows about the marijuana and the smirk and whatnot, but you know, Kamala kind of made it her agenda to make sure that she locked up a lot of black people, a lot of black people. Uh, so Joe Biden made the statement that if you weren't, if you didn't vote for him, you weren't black, and that kind of got him a lot of vote, especially a lot of late votes.
Niggas ate that up.
Yes, sir.
I don't even
But
understand why. I didn't understand why when he said it. Like, what? How are you gonna tell somebody what qualifies them to be black as a white man? First off, but
and
then, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
and then you go back and look at his track record, of course. You know, which a lot of people, like, we kind of
And
pick.
they was ignoring it. Well, he's not the same man. He
Yeah,
worked with
right.
Obama. Working with somebody don't mean nothing. That
No,
man is still who he is at the core of his soul.
yes, sir. I
You
do
don't just
agree.
change in 8 years and you've been the same way for 30 something years in the same seat doing the same thing, and now because you got put on the ticket to help this man win, because as a black man, if he would have put any other black person on there, he definitely wouldn't have won. You were used as a pawn, but now you're using that pawn ship to make other people pawns.
But my question is, they've kept her so far in the background politically, except for when it comes, of course, like the abortion issue. She's a black woman, so I mean, they it. Well, no, she's not a black. Well, we'll go
He's
into
mixed.
that later. But
He's
uh,
kind of black.
she's a woman of color.
Hmm.
So, uh, but as far as putting her, like, she can talk about immigration. because that's a color problem. She can talk about abortion because that's a woman problem.
I have never
But
really seen her talk about a lot of things. I haven't
right,
really seen her too much at all, but like he was, she is a ticket person. She's like selling the show out. I just imagine Brown and Usher. Like Chris Brown is already good, and then he put Usher on the ticket. Oh yeah, them tickets is sold and they gonna resell at 3 times the value. That's all they're putting fillers on there because it's an emotional play. Because if we put a black woman in here, ooh, we're gonna get the black votes and we're gonna get the woman votes. The women votes is more almost important than the black votes for sometimes, for some of them. But I was a fan of Kamala for maybe about 2 weeks until I heard about how she was in California as a district attorney. And then I was like, I'm good, like okay, black woman, but just because you're a black woman does not always mean that you have the best interest for other black people at hand, especially when you're married to a white man. Now, that should make a difference. But a lot of times it does because it tells you what your focus is going to be. It tells you your real and true objectivity. And yeah, she has I've never been a sad from when she first started, and I was like, "Okay, black woman, go ahead, girl." And then I learned about her, and I was like, maybe not. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to take that support back a little bit."
yeah. So I'm wondering, like, is she gonna run on the fact that she's black and female? I mean, what do you think?
She won't
She
run
has
it.
shown.
She won't run on her own. I don't think the only way she'll be president is if they find him unfit. Because right now, I don't know if it's between him saying the one word for America is "zubba-dubba-dubba-dubba-dee," or if it's him saying repeat that line and then repeating the line off the teleprompter like he can't don't know how to read a teleprompter after all these years, or him falling off the bike. I mean, like at this point he does not seem mentally. And then the other day, he was shaking the air hand like he has a lot going on. I think it's the COVID shots. I think that has debilitated him mentally a lot. I know that they are saying all this other stuff like about is not gonna have side effects, but I believe that has pushed his aging a little bit because sometimes the side effects are your mental capacity for some things. So in the last 6 months, even just the other day, he said he had cancer. When did you have cancer, sir? You got cancer now, or did you used to have cancer? Because, and then after that, he's like, yeah, I tested positive for COVID. Joe, we just heard you say you had cancer. So do you got cancer or don't you got cancer? We don't care about that COVID. You done had 13 shots. You done had boosters, triple vaccinations, and everything else. And you still got, so I just, I think that his time should be up. I think that he is not fit to lead. I don't like anytime a person is turning around from a podium and shaking the hand of somebody that's not there. And he had it almost seems as though he has some type of dementia going on or the beginning stages of it.
I think that Joe may have the beginning stages of dementia, as you said, uh, but I'm more concerned about some of the other decisions that Joe is making or not making. And but the one thing, and of course he might not remember it now, but he did also say what was last month that he was going to run again for president. So when I look at what they did to uh, Bernie Sanders, uh, who was the other the lady that Trump always called with the Pocahontas claimed she was Indian. Then they found out she wasn't.
Ooh.
Uh, she was one of the the other big liberals in government. But Trump used to call her Pocahontas. I can't think of who she is right now. But anyway, I look at what they did to both of them. They, of course, talked about Bernie, called him a socialist, which scared the hell out of most white people. Socialist, you're gonna give all our wealth away. You're gonna tax the rich. So forth, so on. I think it was there was another senator that was proposing a universal income. And they, you look at what they did to these people, and people that were talking about actually saving Social Security, and people that were talking about different agendas as far as green energy and voting rights and stuff like that. And I look at what the political machine has done to them. So I'm thinking, are they really going to let a black person even run again for the presidency when you think about they would rather have a demented old white man back in office.
Now they won't let a black woman probably get the seat. Anybody can run. Anybody
Of
can qualify to
course.
run, but qualifying to run and them actually allowing the electoral college is not the way people think that it is. So it's almost impossible um in the way that things are ran today for a person to get elected that they don't want in office. A lot of people don't realize that they really control who goes in office because even when Trump won, he didn't really win. They just didn't, acknowledge the fact that he didn't win. They wanted that man to win more than they wanted Hillary to win for whatever reason. But I just was I see a lot of clips on social media, and there's a clip about Texas politicians that I just saw, and it was talking about how the billionaires in Texas are kind of in the pockets of all the politicians. So technically, it's not the politicians that's making the rules; it's whoever the lobbyists and the billionaires are that's in their ears and in their pockets that's doing everything. So at the end of the day, it don't matter who is put in office, as long as the people that with the money are making the decisions for the politicians, and whoever's funding the most normally has the most say so.
Good evening, Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott.
Greetings, greetings.
Oh,
I've been
no,
listening
no.
to some very enlightening conversation. Very
All right.
enlightening conversation.
Well, I got some subjects tonight that I particularly picked them out, especially my second one, because of you, sir. Uh, of course,
Of course.
there's not about rap music, but we're gonna get into a couple of things
Well, I
here.
got plenty. I come well armed with that, so you don't want to go there with me.
uh, but let's talk about Kamala Harris and the next presidential election, 2024. As Dr. Casey and I were talking about, we were saying that Joe Biden ran on, basically the premise that, you know, uh, if you weren't black if you didn't vote for him. So we're asking Kamala Harris, is the her agenda going to be that I'm black and I'm female? I mean, what have you seen her done? Since she's been in, she hasn't been in the forefront for voting rights. She hasn't been in the forefront for our infrastructure bill, but she has managed to be in the front of uh, abortion rights and immigration. But I think that's mostly because she's from out here in the state of California, and of course they boost up the energy. We got Mexicans running through my backyard as we speak. With with knapsacks full of heroin and cocaine from Mexico. So but what do you think would be well, what do you think are her qualifications for running for president, other than the fact that she was Biden's second?
Well, I mean, really, any vice president really is not in the forefront. I mean, that's just that's just almost a figurehead type of a thing. Vice president that has no power. That has no real. I mean, that's bringing in somebody at the beginning to help you get votes is basically what they do. They pick somebody from certain areas and certain parts of the country that they think they can get some more votes from. So that's basically all that is. And as far as some of the comments that Dr. Casey was saying about our current President Biden, I mean, I see that he seems to be on his last legs, tiptoeing around, trying to go to all these countries and hopping here, hopping there, fist bumping people, and I mean, he's just approval rating is just falling through the basement, and his prospects for being president again, I think, are very low. And I really thought that the COVID thing was a way to get the way out for him. I mean, I thought, as Dr. Casey had said, and you guys had talked about, says he had cancer. Well, when was that? Are you currently treating? Are you is that resolved, or what's going on with that? Now you have COVID. You're almost 80 years old. You're trying to run over to Arabia and all these places, walking around there in the desert with suits on and all.
He
I've
just want
been
to
over
be able to blame whatever his sickness is on whatever country he done been to. That's what the problem. That's what he
Well,
gonna do.
that could be a good one too. That could be a good one too. But as far as Vice President Harris in the presidency, I mean, I just don't see that happening unless this current term something happens with Biden. But as far as her being a candidate, and both sides right now are scrambling. But as far as at that level of presidency, and the whole Republican Democratic thing is just tottering. It's really tottering. I mean, Trump, he's trying to grease his skids now. They've made it set up where Pence and him are dueling to put somebody in Arizona. It's boy, and when we have here in Minnesota, we have a current primary coming up on August 9th, which is really what week or two away, and that's going to say what about Ilhan. That's going to say about several other seats here that I just think their whole thing. I just don't see Kamala Harris as being a viable candidate for president, and I don't see her being viable that her party would get behind her as president unless something were to happen that would flip the script. Say something happens to Biden, she has to make a decision, or something happens that she gets credit for. But other than that, I think she's just one-term vice president, and I think that'll be that basically.
I think she playing her role in the background really good because it kind of exposes what type of leader he is. Because you really don't really hear from her at all,
No.
like ever. Like I don't. It was almost like she wasn't even on the vice presidency ticket because she is like out of sight, out of mind. But as a woman and a black woman, I expect that because politicians don't take well to black people. I mean, black people, but then also black women. Women in general, that's why they didn't let Hillary win for real, for real. They never want to see a woman in power like that because the stigma that comes with it.
Well,
but
I still think Hillary had a chance to win. I
but
think she just didn't work hard enough. She just
but
didn't
but
work hard enough.
but here's the thing, Dr. Casey, and maybe I'm too liberal in some places and too pessimistic in some places, but when you look at the world
Hmm.
and you look at how many women are prime ministers and heads of their government, white people, why do you think it's such a foreign idea to people in America, but most other countries are at least open to or have already had women in powerful positions?
Women are a little bit more subjective. They're a little bit more impressionable and they're a lot more vulnerable. So a woman getting empowered, whether she's black or whether she's white, you got to think about in the slavery times, women were often the ones helping the slaves. It wasn't the white man that was helping the slaves. So when you get into a position, just like you was talking about with Barry and some of the people that want to do things for black people, despite whether a woman is white or black, the compassion that a woman has for people is a lot different. So a woman can get her emotions played on a lot easier than a man can. I mean, men get their emotions played on too, but nowhere near to the extent that women do. So you got to think about, um, and just because those people have positions in those areas doesn't always mean they're actually running things. It's a lot of times people are a face, but the mind behind what's going on is some man telling her what she should do, what she shouldn't do. And so the presentation is always different than the inner workings. It's like, the tip of the iceberg. You don't see the rest of the iceberg. You only see the tip of it. So, and that is the case. Like a lot of times, especially now when it comes to black women in particular, when you think about the empresses and all of the history, like the real history of black people, not in America, but in general, internationally, a lot of black people were not only leaders, but the women were normally the leaders of a lot of cultures in history. And then the men and women work together. So it is something about the power of a woman that they would not allow or they don't want to allow to be seen in that way. One, it would empower too many women. Like, look how hard it is for women to get rights. And I'm not talking about Roe versus Wade, but pay, just regular equal treatment, just having a voice in general. We are the last people that they want to have a voice, an independent voice at that. I mean, just look how Christianity vilifies women from Eve to, you know, down the line. Every woman they made the women subjected to men, and then they told women that they shouldn't be powerful or speak out outside of being up under a man without a man's covering. So all of those things make women subjected to men inside of religion and outside of it.
Uh, uh, Mr. Scott, do you agree with that?
Well, I
In
do.
in in in, in my generation, the most powerful woman in my family was grandma. Whatever grandma said, God damn it, that's what went. I mean, hey, I don't. I've never seen this meek, mild mannered woman that Dr. Casey's talking about in the black family.
Who said anything about meat or mild
Well,
mannered?
what Dr. Case is saying, it makes a lot of sense because it makes sense because just look at the Christianity. Okay, the woman came from the man's rib. I mean, if that isn't some, I've seen how my kids came in.
It
They didn't come
wasn't
from
from
no rib.
nobody's rib.
They didn't come from that. So this all come from a rib and
It
all
was
this
a little
spiritual
further
stuff.
down than the rib. I'm sorry, it was a little further down than the rib.
But that elucidates the whole point of the
Mhm,
subservience that they've tried to do with women since day one. I mean, especially in this country,
mhm.
with the vote and with uh, leadership roles and running things. They just don't get it because I'm with you on this, James. My grandmother, she was no joke, and she had no opportunity to go to school. She ran these houses. She put stuff together for the whole family. She had my dad on the run. You know, she was tough, and there's no question about that. That we need to be able to get best people. We need to be able to, and I still think Hillary. I think Trump was just a fluke. I really think that that was just a fluke. Here's a guy that has nothing to offer for this type of a thing, not run a country. And
Mhm.
during that debate, when he jumped up and ran behind Hillary when she was speaking, if she would have turned around and gave her a piece of her mind right then and there, she would have won. I really believe that. I believe people would have saw through him how fraudulent he was because she gave him his time and he didn't do that. He didn't show her any respect. And I think if she had really brought that out at that debate, because everybody was watching that, that was a critical. When they get down to those last debates, there's a lot of people that are still making up their mind there. And I think she just blew an opportunity. But as far as women being able to do the job, there's no question. I mean, there's no question about that. I mean, that's just something that they've perpetrated on us, and it'll be interesting with Kamala. It'll be real interesting to see what happens because typically they are the candidate, the vice president, if the president doesn't run, and Biden's saying he's going to run.
Man, Biden is not
I
fit
just don't
for
see it.
office.
I
I
don't see it.
if you put a reel together of all the
I
things,
vote for James King before I vote for Biden.
if if you put a reel
Hey,
of
I got
all
one
the
vote. Dr. Casey, do I have yours too? No.
well, I don't know. I have to see what your points are in politics. You have a good
Uh-oh.
conversation, but you have a lot of uh,
You can
uh
call it what it is: animosity, pessimist, all of that.
I
Yeah,
want to say baggage more than any of those other things because you can't just group it into animosity or pessimism or anything like that. But you have a lot of other things going on that makes you a little bit your views a little bit different. So I don't know if your views would actually uphold the same values that I hold when it comes to running a country and people because I don't always agree here, but I respect your opinion.
well, I'd make sure that me and Mr. Scott got a Social Security check. That's for sure. But
Well,
anyway,
I'm gonna get one too.
They've been sending them early. They've been sending them early lately too.
I know. I, I see Mrs. Sims, but I don't see Mrs. Sims. Mrs. Sims, is your camera on?
She might not. She
There
might
she
be
goes. Yeah,
listening.
no,
Oh,
there she is. Yeah, she was hiding from us. That's what.
Okay. my
Yeah.
daughter my daughter bought me a little thing that you can block the camera when you want. So that was on. I had that on.
Oh,
So I
okay,
pushed it to
okay.
the side. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
well, we were talking about Kamala Harris, Miss Sims, and you know, as Dr. Casey had pointed out, about Joe Biden, falling off the bike. Mr. Scott was, and Dr. Casey both talking about his referring to him having cancer. We've seen a lot of, shaky performances by the president, but he says that he's going to run again. And I referred to his uh, way that he ran the last campaign, where he says that you weren't black if you didn't vote for him. So I'm wondering, what is Kamala Harris going to run on the fact that she's black and female? I mean, you don't really see her out there, in the public, except when it comes to either abortion issues or immigration issues. She's not really one that's put out there as someone that's going to be a viable candidate for 2024. But considering the way that Joe Biden is acting, do you think? I mean, what is going to be her agenda? The fact that she's black and female. What do you think about her as a possible candidate for 2024?
When you say her possible candidate, you mean candidate running with Biden or candidate on her own?
No, no. I see. You didn't listen to me, there, Miss Scott.
I heard you.
I said that Joe Biden has said that he is going to
Right.
run for president.
Right. I heard
So
that.
if he's going to run for president, then that means that he is going to run. And I'm saying that if Joe Biden, from all of the ways that has shown you that he
Mm-hmm.
might be suffering from dementia
Mm-hmm.
and might not be a viable candidate, what would make Kamala a viable candidate?
You're
The
right.
fact that the
I
fact
didn't hear it that way, but yeah, I got you now. Um, I keep saying this, folks. Politics is a strategy, power, and control. So anything that's going to get a party in power to stay in power, whatever, they're going to create a strategy to do that. Now, Biden's health might, this is just an example off the top of my head. Biden's health, et cetera, might be an issue, but they're going to put someone, offer someone who they feel that can win, even if it's Biden out of the rest home. They're gonna put a candidate that's gonna win. Then part of their strategy could be after they win, they can claim, Biden's ill health and push the vice president up. They're going to come up with a strategy to win. I don't know what it's going to be or who it's going to be. And I think Camilla, um, I don't see her a lot, but I haven't kept up with politics as I used to. But she's out there somewhere because you have to keep up. Though you have to, between voting years, you have to keep in contact with some way with your constituents, the people that's going to help you
well, right
get rolled. But
right now it's Roe v. Wade because, as I said, she's a woman, so so they have her in front of the Roe v. Wade
yep.
action, and being from California here, they also have her on immigration,
Uh-huh.
where she's supposed to be the face of immigration reform. So those are
That
the
she
two
go
things.
abroad. That she go abroad sometimes, represented in the United States. But
She does. She
okay.
does go abroad. Yeah, she does
Yeah,
go
yeah,
abroad.
yeah.
But usually, if you notice lately, when they send her abroad, they send her to Latin American countries. They send her to Costa Rica. They send her to Honduras. They send her to Mexico.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well, and going to Mexico, that's still part of a strategy because you have Mexican immigrants here in this country, and that's part of people who vote, et cetera, et cetera. So it's, and like I said, I strongly believe in and looking at past behavior in politics. They're going to put somebody, I heard Mr. Scott said he would vote for you, James. Now, I would vote for you, James. You might come up with some stuff that gets all in trouble, but they're going to come up with a
I,
strategy to win.
I talked to Dr. Casey, and we find out how we could keep me in office. But anyway, go ahead.
Uh, so, yeah, that's not
Dr.
too far
Casey,
away.
you up for being vice president?
I would be a good advisor. I don't know if I would be vice president, but I definitely would be a good advisor. That is my role. That's my area of expertise. Support.
All right, I'll let you see. You can keep me reined in when I come up with, like we should take all these. Never mind.
Right.
Anyway,
Thank you, James. Thank you, James, for not continuing the
See?
sentence.
now, this next question is actually directed toward you and Mr. Scott, and Mr. Scott in particular. Now, I'm going to make sure that I read this off my notes here because I don't want to get it right. I mean, wrong. So, uh, Mr. Scott, you have been talking about the elections up in your neck of the woods. So, I'm going to ask you here. Let me make sure I got this right here. Okay. Blacks on both continents have persevered through physical as well as mental slavery, political suffrage, and systematic strangulation of economic opportunities. Can you tell me why there is such diversity of success between Black American immigrants and the Black American community? And I'm speaking specifically of the powers of Ilion and other communities within your community that have more success than the black community that has been that has been within your community probably throughout at least your adult life. So when you talk about, you know, uh, Ilion and how she hasn't been back in her district since she's been elected, why is it that the Somali community can be so successful using the same laws and paths to power, but yet within the black community, you guys complain, but you elect the same people over and over again?
You always go to that electing
Well,
the same
thank
people.
you.
Yes, because
Thank you.
because
Thank you.
You
because
only elect the people that's
uh,
running. You can't
hold
elect somebody that's not
on.
running.
Well, that's my point. Mitch McConnell has been in the Senate since I've been a little boy. You got a whole lot of these old ass people older than me that are still there, and the only reason why they can stay in power is if you vote them in power.
No, if
If you
nobody
vote
else,
them,
if they are the incumbent, then who is going to replace them? If nobody else is running, who is going to replace them? Who?
well,
Who?
whoever you elect.
Who?
Uh,
Who?
go-
You cannot just make somebody a candidate if
oh, oh,
like you can
okay,
write in people.
hold on.
And how do you write in people unified? You can't unified write in people if nobody is running.
But this was our strategy of the during the civil rights era. If you didn't have somebody that you wanted in office, you wrote them in. This is
Yeah,
old strategy.
that would
This
be
is not new strategy.
that
This
would
is
be a million people writing in a million different names.
no no
That's
no
not
no
gonna win.
no. I'm not. Hold it now. I'm not talking about on a political level. I'm talking about on a local level. I'm
What
talking
brings
about.
this people?
I'm talking about when you elect the same mayor for 2 or 3 terms. I'm talking about when you let him appoint a police chief that you know is going to put your community at risk for term after term. I'm talking about when you do send. You know, you keep sending Omar uh, 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 to Congress when you have other viable candidates within your community. It takes votes, it takes people to get out there in the grassroots. So if you're not going to change your grassroots policy, how are you going to get these people out of office?
If nobody comes to run, it doesn't matter what level it's on. You cannot have all the voters writing in who they think should be in
But
the
there are,
seat. Because guess
but
what? Everybody will write in different names. You cannot leave that. That's the problem. You cannot leave
hold on.
decisions like that up to people because they don't know how to make the right decisions.
Hold on. Mr. Scott has a program where every week they bring on viable candidates from the community.
Are
This
those
last
candidates running?
Mr. Scott, she's asking you a question. Are those people running or what? They just on the
Well,
show for? Are they just on there for show or what?
well, I think James, your initial question is really you're just trying to get me to say something about the Somalis up here because everybody knows my thoughts about that. And so, what's going on up here with that particular, and this is about immigration too. This morphs into that. Now, there's an article that was in this our paper here. With a great man used to call it the Johannesburg Times, but it's actually the Star Tribune. And what you see is a picture of immigrant rights advocates at City Hall demanding more funding for Minneapolis, the Minneapolis Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs. Okay. Now, what they want to do is they want to get IDs so they can have an ID, but they don't want the government to know that they got the ID because ICE is rounding some of them up if they're here illegally, if they're undocumented. And see, and that's the thing that I just don't understand. When they come here, you have to be a citizen, I thought, to access services here. You have to be a citizen to get involved with Section 8. You don't have to have any of that. You can just be over here, and they're demanding that mayor and the city council take immediate action to improve and protect the lives of immigrant residents, including those who are undocumented. They demand this. I mean,
But
They just got
That's
here.
that's where Trump was in your favor because Trump wasn't for none of that. He was sending them back to where they came from, quick, fast, and in a goddamn hurry. He did not want because in some places, a lot of benefits are based on what the state wants to do. The federal government oversees
How many
the cash flow.
how many Ukrainians have we sent back? And I'm talking about even before the war. How many French or Spanish have we sent back? How many Germans have we sent back? Do you think that black people and brown people are the only illegal immigrants in this country?
Definitely not. It's
No,
Go ahead,
definitely
Mr.
no.
Scott.
But I want to go on a little bit on this
Yeah.
article where they're saying the group's demands include creating financial assistance for deferred action for childhood arrivals, DACA, boosting funding and staffing for levels of city office of immigrant and refugee affairs, stopping Minneapolis police from arresting residents for citations that could put them on immigration's authorities' radar. Okay, they're saying that these municipal IDs would stop unnecessary arrests of many unauthorized residents while allowing them to greater access to services such as opening bank accounts, renting apartments, receiving medical care. They're making these demands. They're going and standing there at City Hall and saying, "This is what we want. We don't want you to arrest us because we're undocumented. We want you to leave us alone. We want you to do what we tell you to do."
You know what that reminds me of? Native Americans when they didn't want to be documented, when they didn't want to be in the books because they knew that as soon as they was documented, one, they was going to be falsely documented, and then in some
They're a
instances they
sovereign
would send
nation.
them.
They're a sovereign nation in this country. They are a sovereign nation here, and they've been here. They are sovereign. They can demand what I stand with them. They were here first. I
Okay,
stand
so
with them.
I go back to my original question. How has this group of immigrated people managed to maintain and cultivate more power within your community than the black Americans that have been there before they even came here?
Well, it goes back to what Dr. Casey's saying. People are being put in who they want to put in. That's getting them in there. I mean, this is there's a person in my district. It's what is it? It's not a council, but oh, is it Omar Fatah? No, state representative. State representative Jeff Hayden had been here for many years, and a young Somali, Omar Fatah, 21, 22 years old, beats him, takes the seat, and now he's up for some type of election fraud. They said that he was somehow they had some kind of because you can't tell the names, and see, and that's another thing with that particular group. When they come here, they don't have birth dates. They have names that are, I mean, very difficult to ascertain. Muhammad,
Everybody,
Muhammad, yeah.
yeah. uh,
So
Miss Sims,
Yeah.
they can't be.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
go ahead, Mr. Scott.
No, I'm just saying. And then they make these demands. They can't be pinned down. They're up for several criminal activities here. They don't mention it here, but I mean this right and wrong comes in all colors. This happens, and they need to be if they're undocumented. I guess I'm unclear what that really means. If you're here undocumented, but you can do anything that any citizens can do, well, what difference does it make? What difference does it make? If they get a driver's license, they get an ID, get social security card.
You can't get a social security card if you're not documented. That you cannot do.
You sure about that?
Well, out here in California, I don't know if things are different, but I'm assuming that this is, kind of one of the uniform things. But
Yeah.
because, well, that also goes back to the things about undocumented people out here in California being able to vote. Well, there are certain documents that you need that you know, you have to be a citizen in order for you to vote. That's the, that's one of the myths of the right, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But Miss Sims, what are you thinking? How has this uh, immigrant uh, population been able to gain more power than the uh, Black Americans that have been there all their lives?
I think first you have to look at it's a strategy, and first you have to look at, and I haven't looked at it for years, the immigrant policy of allowing people to come in documented or undocumented. They're trying to change policies to bring more undocumented immigrants, give them all rights, like Mr. Scott saying. But those Somalis immigrants that are in our political system right now, they could not have gotten there unless they had inside help, political inside help to attain those um, positions. Because Omar took our Attorney General Ellison's place, I believe. Now he's a Muslim, and so the Muslim, one of the things that a lot of the immigrant communities still have intact when they come here, there's still communal groups, and there are more immigrants coming in addition to immigrants of color that you can see with your own eyes. Other immigrants are coming in that are white, and they blend in more, to be they're the invisible population, immigrants that come in. But and I thought about this, James, that these immigrants in our political systems could not have gotten there with inside political help, and to attain those offices. And then once you get them in, they are the political powers, whoever they might be. Uh, they're used. They can be used, and maybe people don't realize on the surface, or maybe even immigrants themselves. And once they're in office, whoever's helping them to get in office, it serves a purpose of immigrants being in office versus Black folk like you, James, that wants to run. This is Scott, and they also still the total politicals. They still count on people, not the mass population, not voting. So the more people you get to not vote, the more you're able to gear the ones that are voting in the way that you will have them. And if the same amount of people are voting year after year, you get to know who these people are, where they are, and during election time, your energy and thinking and mind are on those groups are going to vote. And a lot of the people that don't vote, at least here in Minnesota, they haven't got caught on to it yet, or they don't realize that voting is a way here that's going to help deal with, especially at the local level, deal with the police department, the attorney generals, and things like that, who are more directly impacting things that are going on in your life. And even when and I think through the years, it's slowly been happening, because I can remember when I was about 25 or 26 when I had my first child. When we moved here from the person I married was a senior at Syracuse University, and when we moved here, a scholarship for his degree, and I had my first child, I was not working, and so I would go down to the health department, and because we didn't have a steady income, I was eligible. I had a child for certain kind of coverage. Then along came, about that time, was a wave of the Hmong from the Vietnam War had kind of ended, and a lot of the Hmong persons were coming in, at that point. And so I noticed when they were coming in, the Hmong populations were coming in, they took the system took off the black residents and the white poor residents. They reduced the times we were able to visit the clinics and stuff because persons, immigrants coming in, they felt needed those services at a greater rate than black and poor people here already here. And so that was one way. And then with the Mr. Scott, I remember this. It's Heritage Park now, but there was a project or whatever down on Ocean Highway, and so a lot of times uh, um, to find immigrant populations, and I'll say that time it still was in the 90s and so on, and the Hmong populations that were coming in that had helped the service people, James, you might know, over the war in Vietnam. And so at that time, that big populations was coming in, that housing development down the street cleared of black folk, and that's where they're housed a lot of the immigrant populations coming in. And so black folks got dispersed to, I don't know where, maybe out in the suburbs to homes or whatever. But here again, that's how you can manipulate quietly, or maybe people aren't watching it, manipulate the system of who's coming in. And eventually, the theory was that as the Hmong population came in, they became more acclimated to what was going on, and they would then want to move out of those projects and find homes and things. That didn't happen because one of the things that they failed to recognize in the beginning is that immigrants are still communal. And so when the Hmong population and their families got homes, they stayed there for years and years until the place was torn down. And a lot of times, the immigrant populations come in and they are used instead of black folk, because when a lot of the uh, African immigrants came in, and we used to have black students during the summer at these summer jobs in the department stores and all around. And suddenly I looked up, and my children were younger then, and then they had been replaced with Somali youth and stuff. And I said, where are black children? Where are they? And so unless you dig into that, things like that, to find out, you'll never know. And at this point, when I was in the hospital 2 times, I was in there a couple weeks and whatever. The only literally black American folks that I saw was my daughter when she came to visit me, and my son when he could. And so a lot of the persons, nurses, aides, and whatever, were of the Somali community, and they were cleaning floors and nurses' assistants and things like that. So that is one. That is another way for how that community is supported in finding jobs and things and preferences. One of the things, and I'll finish. One of the things that I think, just the way the system works, if and the system never announces, let you know when a population of immigrants are coming in, you know, and when they come in and they start replacing the black folk, where are the black folk going to go, and poor white folks and whatever? Are they pushed off the tables because they don't have any houses to live in now, or become homeless? So that's one of the unfairnesses of allowing non-document immigrants come in, that you are, in order to get them in, you are replacing the poor and destitute people that are already here, and they're on their own. And it just, the system. And one other thing, even a couple of years ago at our state legislature, there are various councils of color, like the Asian Council on Black Minnesotans, Council on Asians and stuff. But a couple of years ago, in order to integrate, there was a big debate at the Capitol because they wanted to do with the Council on Black Minnesotans because they didn't want to spend the money, and they wanted to incorporate the Black immigrants that were coming in. So one way, some sort of deal was struck that okay, the Council on Black Minnesotans could still be here, but it would change its name to the Council of People of African Descent. And so there are various ways that the city that the structure incorporates our immigrant populations, and especially with a lot of the attitudes. You all know this. The attitude is still out there among a lot of folks in terms of don't want Black folk in various places, so they will choose immigrants over Black folk.
Uh, Miss Sims, you do know that they have told you that there's going to be 250,000 refugees. I mean, yeah, 250 million refugees coming over here from Ukraine. So where do you think those jobs are going to go to? Do you think that all of a sudden that there's going to be a boom in the Black community of prospective jobs? Glad to see you tonight there, Brother Williams. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Nowadays, James, just to answer the question, nowadays a lot of times when large immigrant populations come in, they are kind of placed in outstate areas with a lot of the food industries, like the ones that produces the chickens and things like that. That's where a lot of immigrants that find work and stuff out in those areas.
Uh, Brother Williams, the question that I was posing was, how is it that coming from similar backgrounds, oppression, economic inopportunity, so forth and so on, high crime areas, how is it that we have let immigrant populations, and we've seen the same thing here in San Diego. I remember here when I moved out here in 2003, the only thing you heard about was some type of shooting or some type of violence in the Somali community. Now it seems like, as well as in Minnesota and other states, they have collected a lot of political clout. How is it that we have allowed immigrants coming over to usurp the power that we should have as Black Americans?
Well, to me, you have to look at it from this perspective. Number one, the way they go about coming to the United States is based on coming in for the sake of maximizing opportunity. The United States poses itself as a land of opportunity, and coming from an environment or a country, to where it is a whole lot worse than what it is in the United States, you're going to have a whole different mentality about embracing everything that makes the United States what it is in regards to capital. So they will be willing to take on lower paying jobs. They'll be willing to work harder in order to get recognition, just to get up to the point of some of the things that we typically take for granted or we feel is inadequate or unfair, simply because we're coming from a position of victimization and a position of already being here and a position of feeling like, as Black African Americans, we have been done wrong. So we have this actual a position, and hope y'all don't take this wrong, but we have to a degree of position and a sense of entitlement that goes into an expectation of being treated fair, versus an African outside of the United States going in feeling like, you know what, things are corrupt everywhere. I'm going to go to the United States. They're corrupt. My country is corrupt, but guess what? I can get further as an individual within that corrupt society, and I'm willing to play the corrupt game from an individual standpoint. And they have it. They're operating from an intact culture, which basically means when I get in there, whatever I find out that is an angle to work the system, because they want to work the system of capitalism. They want to benefit from it as it is. They're not trying to, from a perspective like us, correct the situation. They want to benefit from what it is. So as soon as they find these inroads, they're gonna go back, they're gonna reach back and bring everybody they can with them. And also, within a lot of third world countries, what we don't recognize is that the basic everyday economic system for the general population is typically based around some type of hustle that you do in order to put food on the table. They don't have all of the factories, all of the corporations and things that a lot of times that they can depend upon. So they already come over here with a hustler's mentality. So you take somebody that has a hustler's mentality, you take somebody that knows that you can interject yourself into a system that is built around, if you're willing to push the envelope, built around the loopholes, and then how that intact culture, how that environment, and how that willingness about yourself to grind from going from below minimum wage on up to minimum wage and on up into higher categories. So you got all of that they take into account as they come over here. They risk life and limb to get what we feel like
Take
we should
granted.
already be getting. And
Mm-hmm.
then on top of that, like I said, with the intact culture, and then with the fact that you also they do have people back home that's willing to help them in whatever capacity they can to help reach the bar. And when they get to a certain status, they're gonna move some other folks in with them, and they're gonna share the same household, and they may have 12, 13 people living in the same
Yeah,
house in
yeah.
order to get by, in order to make it. And whereas we have this mentality where with our broken homes, a lot we're trying to push each other out the house at age 18, if not sooner, whereas they will compound, all come in and live within the same home and make it the best way they can. Also, you got to look at the international politics behind some of the refugees or immigrants that come over here. So they have embassy support. There are certain programs that can come along that can be worked. Whereas with Africans and captive Americans, we have issues fighting for human rights because they are from another country. Certain
Mm-hmm.
things are actually made more available to them as it applies to human rights because they are immigrants. They are coming from another country. So certain types of programs and operations open up for them that we feel really should be available to us too, because we're suffering from some of these same human rights conditions. But because we are already here, already American, it's not going to be viewed the same. So a disparity. For instance, we can go back to what happened in El Cajon when you had an African get killed there a few years ago. Um, the fact that you're from another country and you're faced with police violence is going to weigh a whole lot different than if you're African born in the United States and you're faced with police violence. So even from the standpoint of the other country looking at how things, why are my citizens and why are my people getting treated a certain way in your country from a political standpoint, that's going to weigh heavy. So there's all these little parameters like that work in their favor as opposed to working in
Working in
our
our
favor.
favor.
A lot of times, people from other countries think that we feel that same sense of entitlement that Mr. Robert is talking about, and that makes them look at us in a certain way because they feel like how y'all been here and y'all got all of these advantages, and we're coming from a place where there's a lot of disadvantages, but y'all still in the same place. But I also want to say that a lot of countries in Africa aren't as broke as what we see
Right.
on TV. It's a lot
Correct.
Yeah,
of
yeah,
wealthy people in these
yeah,
countries
yeah.
that look like third world countries. And in the reality of the grand scheme of things, we operate more like a third world country than what we've been told a third world country is. I mean, all the way into, I'm just reading a second ago about 50 kids in Alabama being found in a factory working as minors, like slave labor, basically the same type of thing that we are condemning other people for, are things that actually go on here. And then there was a movie that I saw a clip of earlier called Trick Baby. It is from 1972, and in this movie, I would play it, but they'll probably ding you for copyright if I played it. So in this movie,
Iceberg
Iceberg
Slim.
Slim.
No, it's a different movie, but it's a group of white people sitting at a table, literally, and they're saying the reason and how that they pull up the smart black people and pull them away from all of the other black people, because if the smart black person is left in the hood, then they can educate and become a leader amongst the black people and form them together to go against the system. But if you take a black person and the smartest one and pull them up in a way, then they seem like the bad guy to those who they left, because now they are a part of the white man culture. They try to fit in, they do everything that they supposed to do, and they kind of are exercise or whatever that word is, where they are no longer connected to their people, because now guess what?
Ostracized.
Ostracized. Now they've been placed in a position that's higher, and they no longer see themselves as the little people. Now they see themselves. It's kind of like when you get to Herschel Walker and or other people that get into like a Jesse Jackson, even people that get into these realms, and now their fight becomes a little bit moot and dull and void, because now I'm here. So as long as I'm here, I'm good. And then, whatever we could do for the rest of them, we'll do. But it never really gets done. And when you think about it like that, it makes you put things into perspective. Now, will people recognize what's going on and change or make some type of adjustment? Probably not, because the people that are willing to play the game are not the same as the people that's in the game. It's like the banker in Monopoly is not the same as the people that's just running the Monopoly board. It's two different positions. So it's hard to get people. It's hard to get the cattle to lead the dog. The cattle is led by the dog, but anytime that cattle starts leading the dog, then it's a problem.
Mr. Scott.
Yeah,
Oh,
as the follow up on something that Dr. Casey, as she was speaking, reminded me of something a couple of years ago on NPR, that's their public radio station. They had a program dealing with inside of the immigrants, how the government and other people bring in immigrants, and they were talking about how certain immigrant populations are more favored than others, and how the system has set up to choose among the more favored ones to put in certain areas and positions. And I think America isn't keeping their eye on the ball to see how the system is more and more becoming corrupt in terms of equity and equity and equal. Because if you're gonna have a program of bringing in immigrants, they in doing that, when you bring the immigrants in, they should not be displacing anybody else that's here. You should already have housing and stuff for them versus pushing other people out. And then also I think about, what about the persons, the immigrants that's coming the legal ways, that's my understanding, wait for years to come in legally and get all their documentation, etc., etc. And I don't know how that is. I know a few years ago, when I was more active with the League of Women Voters, every year we had a ceremony welcoming new immigrants that are coming in, and most of those immigrants were not persons of color. This is a few years ago, 10 years ago. And so the way that the various ways that the powers that are bringing in various immigrants, especially immigrants of color, it sets up the immigrants of color and the black folk that are already here. It pits them against each other. So that's one reason why they never, and James, you posed this question a few shows back, they never really work together. The black African immigrants and the American blacks never get together to coordinate, to strategize, and being in power and things like that. So those are various things out there that are going on right before our eyes, invisible before our eyes.
Let me
Mr.
speak on that
Scott,
real
go,
quick.
go ahead.
Well, what I was going to just say about that is, I mean, part of what you're saying, Sims, we recognize that between the difference between the Haitians and like you said earlier, the Ukrainians.
Mhm.
The government is going to favor based upon obviously racial as well as what you got to gain.
Mhm.
Haiti doesn't have anything that the United States really want. The United States hate Haiti because it's built upon African slave revolt, whereas Ukraine, it's all types of from a military standpoint, from the natural resources. There's all type of things to gain from a political advantage. That's why I said the international politics play a huge role in that. And so from that standpoint, I'm obviously going to move them more further up the line and go through all types of maneuvers to get them in. Whereas the United States may leave the Haitians behind because to them they're only going to seed up the bottom aspect, and there's not going to be any international political resources I can use as a result of getting them inside.
Yeah,
So those type of things are going to always be a case. And then going back to one thing we got to recognize between African Americans and other Africans is, like, for instance, if a Nigerian comes over here, a Nigerian is coming with a culture. A Nigerian is not going to just say I'm African or I'm black. They're going to say
Right.
I'm Nigerian. They're going to have a dialect. They're going to have a way of life that connects them to Nigeria.
And that's
Whereas
unfair
when you ask
because
us,
that's
what do
unfair
we say?
because a lot of times we have literally been stripped of any
Oh,
type
I
of
get that.
culture or
I'm not I'm
heritage.
not addressing that. I completely get that. I'm telling you why they are able to maneuver whereas we don't, because we have been domesticated. So we are, like you said, we've been stripped, we've been domesticated, operating from a position of domestication versus a position of seeking greater opportunity to take advantage of the country of the United States of America versus fighting the United States of America as if it owes you something, are two different positions altogether. We're fighting from a position of entitlement, and it owes us something as a result of what it has done to our people for 400 plus years. And I'm not justifying either one. I'm just bringing out the concepts. So we're fighting from that position. So we're fighting saying we're owed reparations. We're owed this. We need to be this needs to be done, as well as the United States, obviously in terms of racism, holds us back because of the things that they owe to us. Whereas someone from an outside African coming in, they're not coming here for reparations. They're not coming here for a sense of entitlement. They're coming to take advantage of the American system. They're coming here with certain levels of corruption that they know that they can benefit from and manipulate that corruption and then utilize what resources they have and bring other people into their communities and build their little pockets of communities here and take full advantage of capitalism. So it's a different mentality altogether.
Yeah. And I
Mr.
believe
Scott, come on, we got to let Mr. Scott in here.
No, this is very basically all I can add is what I was saying about the Somali situation here. And I see this as there's only so many resources. I mean, if there's only so many resources and we have an influx of people that can jump to the head of the line and can get those resources before the people that have been here, this is going to cause something like a balloon in the air going out. Something's going to happen. I mean, and what's happening here is we look at an explosion in as we've seen in a lot of cities, but here in particular, with something we've never really seen our weather here, seeing homeless people. And I go through and you see all these camps and all these homeless people. I don't see any Somalis in there. I see black people. I see poor whites. I see poor natives in there. I see in the public housing places that were supposed to be always for seniors when they were built. Well, now it's all Somalis are in all of those. They can jump to the head of the line and get the Section 8. And I'm just saying, from the resource standpoint, that it means we might have to be in something. Well, as Brother Boris said, we're in a war, as he said, and now for the resources also, because things that we think that we're due, we really are due those things. Historically, we've been taxpayers in this country for generations and generations and generations, where people have come here and can go right to the front of the line.
Yeah.
So that's going to cause some tension. And
As a
then this
descendant
article,
of
well, this article that I was pointing out and going to City Hall and saying, when our state and federal governments fail to support immigrant communities, the city of Minneapolis must protect all immigrants in the city of Minneapolis. Well, under what guise? I mean, they need to protect all citizens in the city of Minneapolis, all citizens. But then they're able to create this niche where they go, they took over City Hall, had the mayor there. We're going to create this MIRC effort to make sure immigration justice is achieved in Minneapolis. They want these IDs that can't be traceable, that can't be ran across ice for those that can be deported. They don't want any. They call that illegal for us to do those things. And so I understand this jumping ahead of the line, but where is, I mean, our people are here since the beginning of this country, since the development of this country. And how we attain these things and how we get our due, I think that that's been our elephant in the room for years.
Well, I think
And I
what you're
see it
talking
just
about,
glaring here in Minneapolis.
what you're talking about is the difference between a people that are unified as
Mhm.
opposed to people that are divided. Again, if we're domesticated and we fighting things from all different angles because we don't necessarily know how to connect with one another, as well as this country, going back to, thank you for bringing up war before I do. This country has made sure it continues to divide the African American population against itself so that we will not be able to, since we are internal here and we pretty much built this country. If you allowed us to thrive, then we would be able to take over. Period. This
We
is
will
why they
learn our rightful
destroyed.
place.
This is why they destroyed Black Wall Streets, not just the Black Wall Street, everybody know, but Black Wall Streets all across the country. We
Mhm.
have constantly been under attack to prevent us from being the way they are. Other ethnic groups and immigrants that come in, they still have a land base that they tie things back to, and they're going to keep that exchange going. They're not attempting to do like how we have build a Republic of New Africa and take over 5 states. They're not
See,
attempting to take things back from the United States. They want to capitalize off of capitalism. That's a whole different ball game than what we're playing.
You know?
And you can't forget what Mr. Williams brought up in terms of that money trail thing also. There's money in that. And I've known immigrants that the system has used are are using and taking advantage of them when they're in here. They come here in my experiences in the 90s, when there was a influx of immigrants from Mexico that were coming here. And at that time here in Minnesota, the Catholic Church was real involved in giving them sanctions, immigrants that were being caught, being from being caught and sent to jail illegally. They had a lot of the Catholic churches, and they have some sort of policies in terms of you can, I forget what it's called, but you can request sanctions within the Catholic churches. And at that time, a lot of I think from Mexico immigrants were Cuban or Mexican immigrants were coming in, and a lot of the white folks, I know this for sure because I heard it and I looked around what was going on. A lot in order to get the Americans to kind of accept a lot of the illegal immigrant population that were coming in. A lot of the white organizers at that time had come up with a strategy of telling the immigrants the attitude was to gain favor is to say that the Americans needed them because they were become the low wage workers in the hotel industry and things like that, and get in housing and things like that. And so eventually, what happened once a lot of the immigrant populations came in, got into the system, and they knocked a lot of the at that time, I believe, in here in Minnesota, a lot of the groups wanted to unionize, and that was they were resisting that. So they brought in a lot of the immigrants that didn't know about unions and were willing to work for lower wages. But the thing, and how this particular was in the 90s, group of people were used, that once the people, a lot of the immigrants came in and got housing and things like that, after at 5 or so years, they now found themselves to be taken advantage of, just like the poor uh, blacks and whites that they had replaced. And so and then they start raising their voice and organizing and things like that. So that's when we have the system uses the immigrant populations also.
Uh, Miss Sims, if it was with immigrants, you might not have tomatoes on your plate or in your salad, because uh,
I
you
I, I
you you
agree
you can you can say whatever you want, but I don't know too many black folks going out there and picking strawberries and tomatoes, and I mean, maybe back in the day, I remember we had used to have trucks come by and pick you up to go pick string beans and stuff. Well, nowadays nowadays you got a whole family of immigrants, Mexicans coming over and work all day for $100. But
Yeah, but who was out there before? Who was doing it before they came?
it still wasn't white folks.
Yes,
It's
but
still
black folk
it's
were
still
out there, so the jobs were taken. Jobs have been taken all along the spectrum, like Miss Teresa was saying.
that was in our generation, Miss Sims.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was in our generation. Young
right.
folks today, go show me three people in your whole city, black people that go out there and pick any type of crops
I
I
for.
got a
agree. I agree with you, James. You
garden.
can go
I
down
got a
here to the
garden.
farmers
Greens,
market.
green
Sit down,
beans.
go down here to the farmers market, and you don't see any black vendors bringing in and selling their wares. You don't see that.
Yeah. So go ahead, Mr. Scott. I heard you getting ready to say something. Now I cut you off.
No, I just said no. I've got a garden. I mean, I've always had a little garden. Actually, right now, I need to juice it up more because it's not looking as good as it has in the past. So I got to juice it. But I've always did it. My grandmother, grandfathers, they always had gardens, big gardens in the backyard. My grandmother canned
But
food.
but
I mean, made the
brother
best
Williams,
all
do
type
you
of head
remember
in my
when
life.
do you remember when these used to be? Excuse me. Back in the early days of uh, black awareness, or back in, especially back in the days when it was I'm black and I'm proud. Do you remember when we used to have neighborhood gardens?
Yeah, community gardens, and that's one of the things that we try to fight for right now. As a Black Panther Party, we participate within the community garden here. But the thing is, again, the point is, this goes right back to what we were saying already. How we as a people are basically pinned to fight against each other. We're taught to be crabs in a barrel, and generationally we educate our children and so on and so forth with that. So we have this level of dysfunctionality to where it keeps us from learning how to create a black community. This is why we don't have the dollar circulating within our community. But like we said, when we talk about other ethnic groups, they will pile up in the house and they will establish a businesses over here, and and even just like what Dr. Casey was saying, which is very true, some of the wealthy ones will come over here, establish those, and then bring over the ones that may not necessarily be as wealthy to run those businesses, because they can pay them lower wages than not to pay somebody from the United States, but yet they're still doing better off here, making the wages that they would make here as opposed to where they would be. And then they would build their communities around these businesses, because again, they already have a hustler's mentality, because small business is how they had to operate over there. And now they're able to deal with import export. Now they're able to get into all types of things that are held back from us. So it's meant to keep us divided and down as African Americans here.
I think that not knowing our heritage and
Yeah,
our ancestral roots to this land and not this
there you
country
go.
plays a big part also, because
Big time.
a lot of things that we are seeking from the United States, they won't give us because they don't want us to know our heritage and our ancestral roots to this land, because at which it makes it a little bit confusing, because you got people that want the reparations, but they want it up under the terms of slavery and not
Hmm.
up under the terms of Native American
Right.
um uh, uh roots in this country. So it, like I was saying earlier, as somebody that knowingly has Native American roots, I'm almost not even wanting to be a Black American, because that doesn't define me and my culture and where my bloodline comes from. But it also comes with a lot of disadvantages to keep labeling ourselves as Black Americans. You got to remember that back in the early 1900s and in the late 1800s, they weren't even labeling the Native Americans as Native Americans. They were
Right.
labeling them as everything else. So they would be confused about who they were as people. And now we are lost in our heritage because we literally don't know the roots of who we are, and everything that stems from who we are ancestrally is thought to be demonic or thought to be evil, or something is wrong with it. So even when you try to connect people with their roots, most people don't believe it. You know, as soon as you say you got Indian in your family, people looking at you crazy. Or if you
Right.
try to connect yourself to the roots of this land versus this country, it is a problem. So a lot of times that's why we see Native Americans going through some of the things that they go through, as far as things being revoked from them and taken from them, because guess what? The goal is not really to keep Black people down. The goal is to keep Black people from not knowing who they are.
Yeah, but
Literally.
that goes with the land. So the point is they're not going to turn over the land, and that's the bottom line. So
And that's why it's
it,
hard to get
yeah,
the people in office to do things that we need them to do. When you keep saying how is this helping Black people? They are they want to help African American people. They don't want to help Native American people. They don't want to
right,
really do what should be done, which would be identifying who were actually Native Americans, who were Native Americans and taken as slaves and then told to be African, or that were not even slaves, but were made slaves, because I don't believe as many people came on ships from Africa as we've been told. But as long as that gets their narrative the power that it needs, then that's the story that we'll have to believe.
Yes, Dr. Casey. He who writes the history controls the history, as that's just a little saying, but it describes what you just said. And one of my cousins in Philadelphia did some tracing of our my family's my father's side of the family's roots back, and here are the documents and stuff all the way back to the 1820s. It's a fascinating read, but unless you dig for your history through I think she went to ancestry.com or so. Unless you dig in and dig personally and individually and trying to find your roots, you will not find them. And
Even trying to register once you find your roots is hard, because of the way that the Native Americans originally was not. The reason why the census exists is because they was trying to get account for who they needed to manipulate and who was going to go ahead and get along. You know what I'm saying? So because when I look at the census from the 1800s, from my greatest grandmother that I could find, a lot of them, they were, some of it said native, some of it said mulatto, some of it said black, some of it said negro, some of it said color. It is whatever they could do to confuse the people that had rights to this land.
and
And
it,
yep,
yeah. And if
Uh,
you remember, Dr. Case, as you if you remember, there was a time when Native American children were taken from their parents,
mhm.
from their camps and stuff, and sent to be educated in religious schools and things like that, and weren't allowed to speak their own language and things like so. That's how part of their history. got lost too in
Yeah.
terms
Well,
of,
the Pope just
wanting
went
to
up to Canada.
civilize.
Pope
Yes.
just went up to Canada to call himself apologizing for all the things that they did against the Native
Mhm.
people
Yeah.
in Canada. The Pope
Yeah.
is up there right now. A old white man, the Pope, supposed to have all this power, wearing all
Really.
these robes and all this stuff.
But a
And so
lot of
that's a
even what they do
family group.
as the Pope, a lot of those things, if you look at native and copper skin history, you will see a lot of replicas of today of what was done way before any of these religions existed. And that is it's like the foolish in plain sight. They put it right there for you. But if you don't know what you're looking at, you don't know to call a spade a spade. You don't know to call exactly what it is that you're seeing, what it is, because the history, the stories, everything has been muddied down and watered down and whitewashed to a point to where it wouldn't even make sense. The truth would make sense. We've been told we've been slaved and shipped from Africa for so long that if 95% of people were really native to this land, they would not even believe it.
That's true.
uh,
That's true.
well, Mr. Scott, we've been hoodwinked, bamboozled. Give us your final thoughts for the evening.
Well, my final thoughts is what I'm going to be doing is actually I wanted to ask some of you about have you done this ancestry DNA thing? Has
I
anybody
don't.
done that?
I've
I'm
had family that done it, but I won't submit my DNA to
Well,
them
see,
folks.
that's the thing. That's what's holding me back. Then they have this DNA record of me that can be used any way they would like to,
Mhm.
and I don't know exactly how that fits in. But that's what I'm exploring now, whether or not I want to do that because I want to know more about my family through Mississippi, through Alabama. I've talked to some of my relatives who have done it and have told me things like the Lawler family in Talladega in Birmingham. I
I
had
don't
a
think you have to
cousin
do the
named
DNA
Evelyn
part.
Lawler, and but
The D-
Evelyn Lawler's son is Carl the track man, Carl Lewis.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I want to
Doctor,
find out just more about what I can find out about the family. So I'm looking into it, but the DNA part, I'm a little skeptical of.
they
Mr. Scott, I don't think my cousin who did this did a DNA, but I'll look through it, and if I find the route she went, I'll email it to you. I think James has everybody's
Okay,
emails,
Yeah, I
and
do.
send it to you. Yeah, yeah,
the DNA, they taking samples of everybody's DNA is how they fill their database. Prior to people giving them their DNA, they
hmm
don't know. They can tell you that it's from Congo. They can tell you from anywhere because the kind of they just making it up based on what they got. They don't have a lot of a Native American DNA because Native Americans never wanted to be tracked. They stayed under the radar until they didn't have a choice. So it's a lot of things that you wouldn't even be able to. And then the other part is, will they tell you if you're really Native American, or they gonna keep you thinking that you're from Africa? Because they gonna tell you what they want you to see. I mean, it's just it's the way history is written. So you don't really need the DNA part because if you can track, if you know your grandmother's name or if you know one relative's name, if you go on to Ancestry, it will actually pull up people that's related. You'll be able to kind of search through records.
yeah.
So like for
I've
me,
done some preliminary. I've done some preliminary, but my grandfather from Birmingham, Talladega, George Smith. That's the most common name in the history of America.
what the thing
No,
is
no middle name, no middle name, just George Smith.
the thing is a lot of records aren't always uploaded to Ancestry. So like
Yeah, yeah.
if they're not like, I have a lot of family in Springfield, Ohio. I'm actually like John Legend is one of my cousins. His great grandmother is my great grandmother's sister, and then his grandmother, like I just seen her at our family reunion. But you can't get the newspaper articles. It's a lot of things from Springfield, Ohio that's not available online. You literally have to go in there in their archives in order
Yeah.
to get some information.
You have to
So
go
it
Well,
right
was
I
to
have
the library,
newspapers.
get in the
I have the
microfiche
newspapers.
department, all of
I
that
have all
stuff.
the newspapers that you can get. I mean, I
so,
have the news.
but you got them from where? Because some places aren't, it's not uploaded for you to be able to see it. So there could be documentation, whether it's census or newspaper articles, that because some new back then the news was nothing like what we see now. The news then was such and such is having a birthday party, and here's all the people
Hey,
that
wait a
came.
minute. Hold on. All y'all taking over Mr. Scott's final thoughts. What's it?
That
Yeah, I
was
kind
my
of.
final
What
thought.
happened?
That was
This,
my final
I
thought.
was trying to give him feedback on what he was asking about, and his final thought was talking
Yeah,
about the DNA, and he was
and
inquiring about how that works. So I'm trying to inform him that with ancestry, it's really newspaper articles, census, and other things like that you're looking up to try to track to see. Because in the newspaper back then, they had births, they had deaths, they had marriages, they had, and not in the way that we see them now. Like it like literally lists a lot more things in
Oh
those
yeah.
days, more than just the bad news that they um bombard us with now. But when you go and look, that's how I came about the information. It wasn't just from ancestry. I like was literally 2 3 days I heard trying to read old census reports, trying to look at newspaper articles, trying to put piece things together. So it's don't submit your DNA if you don't feel comfortable. That's not a necessary thing. That's just a little bit extra to give them a little piece of you.
Yeah. Uh,
yeah,
that's kind of like vaccinations there, right, Dr. Casey? It's a personal decision.
Yeah.
Miss
With
Sims.
with side effects.
Yes.
uh, well, my side effect is meeting you people that's on my panel, so I'm good. But Miss Sims, your final thoughts for tonight?
Mr. Scott didn't finish, did he?
yeah. I've
Did
done.
you? Okay. My final thoughts. All the things that we have talked about literally on the program tonight finds its roots in politics. So I'm still urging people to register and go to vote. Up here, voting in Minnesota, um, early voting is taking place right now for the primary, and a lot of the candidates that are running for our local sheriffs and attorney generals have been on Mr. Scott's program on Saturday mornings. He and Don Allen's program. If you want to check out, interviews and get more information about that, I suggest that you do that. And Mr.
Our Black Voices every Saturday morning.
Yep. And Mr. Scott, one of the names I see here, but I'll send it to you, is Ancestry Pro Genealogist, but I'll send it to you.
Okay, appreciate it. Appreciate
Sure.
it.
Uh, Brother Williams, we're gonna let Dr. Casey take us home.
That's good. Well, obviously, I kind of came in on the tail end of a lot of the stuff, but I would just basically say that, kind of going back to what Dr. Casey was saying in regards to knowing your true roots and knowing who you are, is that as Africans or Native Americans, either way, we have to find ways to reconnect with each other. We have to find ways to learn how to get back involved in self reflection and be able to accept the fact that we have been damaged to the point of what I refer to as human domestication, which causes us to not care about that aspect of what makes us us. So we don't have a unifying factor here as based on what we've been through in the past few hundred years. The unifying factor has been stripped from us. So we have to form something that's going to connect us to one another, which helps build people power. As we develop a power base, then that will open the doors for us no matter what direction we go in. To me, it's all about them doing the best they can to prevent us from uniting as a people on whatever accord so that we can achieve power. So we have to be able to recognize the power that we actually got if we were to exercise it properly and just be about learning who we are, what we are, and operate from that position. It's about unity.
Uh, Thanks as always, Brother Williams. Look forward to talking to you again next week, as well as Mr. Scott and Miss Sims. Dr. Casey, take us home.
First and foremost, I want to apologize to anybody if I overtalk you, cut into your time, because sometimes my thoughts are just like, wait, hold on, wait, hold. But
It is by words that we convey our thoughts.
so mainly I want to go back a little bit because we talked about a lot of stuff. We talked about Sleepy Joe and his what seems to be onset of dementia, and some maybe some side effects of all those boosters and triple boosters and quadruple booster shots. Um, but we also talked about Kamala, and a lot of it, like Mr. Williams said, it's about power, the structure of power, and learning who we are so that we know how to use what is in place to benefit us. From when I said earlier about the way Trump did things, kind of was a benefit to us because it broke down the system a little bit. It allowed us to see the system a little bit in a way that regular politicians, people that had been raised to be dress right dress, would not allow us to see. But learning how to use these hiccups in the government, learning how to use the truth that is being exposed and compiling that truth so that we can be more proactive than reactive is really the key. We are too reactionary as people. Um, whether we black, white, whatever color you are, we don't wait. We don't operate before something happens. We always waiting until after it happened. Now we trying to recoup what happened versus okay, let's have a plan. Let's figure out what we want to do and then let's figure out how to get it done in the most expedient and efficient way as possible. So it's more about learning, not just learning your background, not just learning your heritage and your ancestral roots, but also learning ourselves because it always, for me, it always comes back to self knowledge because once you start learning more about yourself, then a lot of things will make sense. Now, learning about your ancestry will help you understand things about yourself that you might not have got. So if you have the opportunity to look up old addresses where you know your grandparents used to stay or where you know your parents stayed, that can give you the breadcrumb trail to the history of your family lineage and your bloodline, then that will help. A lot of things that I found, I was looking at old addresses. I found one article that showed me an address of a house that I knew was in our family for a very long time, and looking at that showed me a lot of different things, and it kind of, it's a breadcrumb trail, and you got to follow the breadcrumbs in order to get anything that you're trying to get. Now, how you follow those breadcrumbs and what you do with the breadcrumbs once you follow it, that needs to be subjective because some of these breadcrumbs might be tainted. You might
Yep.
not want to eat all of the breadcrumbs, but it can help you to get to and decipher what you need to understand about you, about your family, and what would be helpful to help your family to make it to the next level. It is about unity. It is about understanding each other. It's sticking together, but we have to know why we're sticking together. It can't just be for the money because greed is always ahead of destruction. So if you're doing it just for the money, you're not going, you're going to get profitable, but you have to have another root cause other than the money because the money going to get funny at some point. And if the money get funny, you're going to act out how you would act without money. You're not going, most people don't maintain who they are when the money goes because that's not really who they are. So it's about building a solid foundation of yourself so that regardless of what goes on outside of you, you can stand strong and firm and still move progressively towards a place of unity, a place of inward peace, so that you can begin to feed into other people. Now, don't overfeed other people because they will drain you and leave you depleted while they full off of what you done fed them. So it's about having balance. Also, you can't give all of who you are away and then be depleted while everybody else profits off of you. And that's what we see a lot, whether it's financially, we spend all of our money, whether it is mentally, we draining all of our energy, we putting our energy into the wrong things. We're definitely too involved in gossip and what's going on that don't really matter. but it's distracting us from the things that do matter. So focus on what matters, not what matters in somebody else's life. What will impact your life in a way that will allow your family, um, whether it's the next generation or those that are aligned with your generation, whether it's your cousins, your aunts. You can't be responsible for everybody, but you are responsible for somebody, and that's not just yourself. Though that is the people. There are people that look up to you that you might not realize look up to you, but the example that you set is the one that will stick with people the longest. So set a good example, not of doing everything right, not of being perfect, not of being, this fake perfectionist, but with being authentically yourself and really accepting that, and then embracing everything that comes with that.
Yeah, we one thing that we do have to definitely learn lessons from and make adjustments is we have to get away from this self-loathing and this self-hate and start doing positive things for each other and getting back to the concept of family. So, uh, thank everyone for participation tonight, and I look forward to talking to everyone again next week. Everyone, have a
Right.
good evening.
All right.
Right, love and light to all.
Bye. Peace and
Hopefully
happy
we can find
trails
out
to
what
everybody.
do rappers do for the black community. I want to know what do the rappers have to
So
say.
wait a minute, because you
Why?
don't you
Maybe
don't
they can
you don't
talk
make
to
He
us
gonna he gonna stab us. He gonna
they keep
shake
you
us at
avoiding
don't
the end
they
of
keep
the
avoiding
day.
that for me. So, but anyway, I've got to go.
wait.
It's been my pleasure, and I'm
Don't
going
don't
to
don't
entertain.
don't even
Sleep
do
on
that.
that. Sleep on
Don't
that.
even do that.
Sleep
Now.
on that.
you, yeah, you know he gonna drop one and leave. I'll see y'all next week.
You
All right.
see
Happy
Next week we
trails.
gonna get him. We
Oh
gonna
yeah,
get him, Casey.
exactly
Next
what
week
I
Trails.
we
was
Good
gonna
gonna
get him.
night.
say.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
All
Bye.
right.